Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to explore a trend that is, well, both fascinating and pretty troubling. Younger generations aren't just disagreeing anymore, they seem to be fundamentally pulling apart. So we're going to unpack the data to see what's really going on.
So, it all kind of starts with a mystery. A little while back, this phrase just took over social media. Just two numbers, 6-7. What on earth does it mean?
Well, here's the secret. There is no secret. And that's the whole point. 6-7 is a perfect example of this new kind of youth culture that just thrives on inside jokes that are so deep they don't even have an inside. It's all about a shared sense of confusion, like a digital secret handshake that means absolutely nothing and everything all at once. You might think these viral trends are trivial, but they're really a symptom of something much, much deeper. We're talking about a generation that is genuinely splitting apart. And these disagreements, they're not just about jokes. They reflect these profound ideological shifts that have very real consequences. Let's break it down.
The first and, honestly, most important place we have to look is online. I mean, this is the new public square, right? And right now, it's being dominated by two really powerful opposing movements that are attracting millions of young people.
On one side, you have the Tradwives, that's short for traditional wives, who are advocating for a return to a sort of 1950s-style domestic life. And then on the complete other side, you've got the manosphere, which is this sprawling network of forums and influencers, all united by their opposition to modern feminism. Both of them offer a very clear, if highly controversial, sense of identity in a world that can feel pretty confusing.
This quote from a key Tradwife influencer, Alina Kate Pettit, really gets to the heart of the movement's appeal. It's this explicit rejection of feminist ideals, all in favor of a very clearly defined traditional role that followers actually see as empowering.
And then you have the other side, the manosphere. Now, this isn't just one single group, but a loose collection of communities built on this central idea that men are the real victims of the modern world. A lot of its narratives are based on misinformation, but here's the thing. Social media algorithms push this content to millions of young, often male, viewers, which amplifies its reach way beyond what you might expect. So, we've seen what's happening in the online world, but does this digital divide actually show up in the real world? Oh yeah. The data reveals this stunning and growing gap between young men and women.
A major global study came to a pretty startling conclusion. On key social issues, the gap between Gen Z men and women is wider than for any previous generation. Think about that for a second. This isn't just a small disagreement. We're talking about a fundamental split in worldview.
I mean, just look at this divide on feminism in the UK. Nearly half of young women identify as feminists, but that number drops to just over a quarter for young men. That is a 20-point gap on a core ideological question.
And this feeling of backlash, well, it's held by a majority of young men. This is not a fringe belief. The idea that equality efforts have gone too far and are now actually harming men has become a mainstream view, which just shows you how deep this resentment can run.
You can see this division so clearly when young people are asked about toxic masculinity. A huge majority of young women, nearly 3/4, see it as a growing problem. Now, while most young men agree, a significant 30% disagree, and that's more than double the rate of women. The perception of the problem itself is divided.
But look, these ideological divides, they don't just exist in a vacuum. They're being fueled by some very real, everyday pressures. So let's look at the anxieties facing young people today.
This quote from a young person in the John Smith Center's youth poll, it's incredibly revealing. It's this deep-seated anxiety about the future, not about abstract ideas, but about fundamental survival, jobs, money, and a country that just seems to be heading in the wrong direction.
And when you ask them directly what would improve their lives, the answers have nothing to do with online culture wars. Their priorities are the absolute basics: financial security, a place to live, and connection with friends and family. This is what's really on their minds.
And yet, despite all this anxiety about the system, here's a fascinating twist. When you ask them about their own personal futures, a surprising majority, 63%, are actually optimistic. They believe they can carve out a good life for themselves. This contrast is absolutely key. The gap between personal optimism and system-level pessimism is what's driving this widespread political disengagement. I mean, why would you get involved in a circus that feels completely disconnected from your real-world problems? It's just easier and feels more effective to focus on what you can control, your own life.
So, what does this all add up to? Well, you've got a generation facing real economic pain. retreating into online worlds for answers, and growing more divided and disconnected from traditional politics. Let's connect the dots.
You can see this clear cycle emerge. It starts with real-world economic pressure, which pushes people online looking for answers. There, algorithms trap them in these echo chambers that harden their ideological divides, particularly around gender. And this, in turn, fuels a retreat from a political system that feels utterly irrelevant to their daily struggles for survival.
And this is the result, a generation in constant motion, blurred and fast-moving, but increasingly fractured. They're all heading somewhere quickly, but they're pulling in completely different directions.
Which leaves us with a final, really challenging question. When a generation's real-world needs are so disconnected from its online conversations, how can it ever come together? What happens when we all stop moving in the same direction?